What if the most wholesome characters in your childhood were hiding the darkest secrets? We grew up watching cartoon moms bake cookies, give hugs, and offer life advice. But behind those warm smiles, the writers were planting storylines that, as adults, we now realize were absolutely wild. Today, we're breaking down 5 moments where cartoon moms were caught, or heavily implied to be, cheating on their partners. These are the scenes the writers slipped past censors, the subplots that flew over our heads as kids, and the moments that completely recontextualize everything we thought we knew about these families. Buckle up because your childhood is about to get complicated. 1. Francine Smith. American Dad. Let's start with Francine Smith from American Dad, because honestly, she might be the most openly reckless cartoon mom when it comes to fidelity, and the show doesn't even try to hide it half the time. Francine is married to Stan Smith, a hyper-patriotic CIA agent who is emotionally unavailable, controlling, and often completely oblivious to his wife's needs. The show uses this dynamic as a springboard for some genuinely shocking storylines. In multiple episodes, Francine is shown flirting heavily with other men, and in some cases, the implication goes far beyond harmless flirtation. One of the most talked about moments comes in the episode where Francine reconnects with an old flame, and the emotional intimacy between them crosses lines that make Stan's paranoia seem entirely justified. The writers frame it with comedy, but strip away the laugh track and what you're watching is a woman in a deeply unfulfilling marriage seeking validation and finding it outside of her home. What makes Francine's case so fascinating is the show's awareness of its own hypocrisy. Stan constantly surveils her, controls her wardrobe, her friendships, her social life. And yet, in doing so, he creates the exact environment that pushes her towards seeking freedom elsewhere. The cheating, real or implied, becomes a form of rebellion against a suffocating dynamic. There's also the infamous Vegas episode and various flashbacks to Francine's wild past that suggest her current behavior isn't anomalous. It's a pattern. The show retroactively builds a portrait of a woman who has never been fully tamed by domesticity, and who probably never will be. Francine Smith isn't just a cheating cartoon mom. She's a character study in what happens when you cage someone who was never meant to be caged. 2. Linda Belcher. Bob's Burgers. Now, Linda Belcher is probably the most genuinely loving mom on this list. And that's exactly what makes her entry here so interesting. Because the cheating in Linda's case isn't physical, it's emotional, and in many ways that cuts deeper. Linda has a deeply complicated relationship with her ex-boyfriend Jimmy Pesto Sr. Yes, the rival restaurant owner who spends every episode trying to destroy Bob's business. On the surface, Jimmy and Bob are enemies. But if you watch carefully, Linda and Jimmy share a history that the show never fully resolves. And their interactions carry a weight that goes beyond simple neighborly tension. There are moments, lingering looks, inside jokes, a familiarity that Bob clearly notices and feels threatened by, where the show flirts with the idea that Linda never fully closed the door on her feelings for Jimmy. It's subtle, it's played for laughs, but it's there. More explicitly, Linda has multiple episodes where she becomes obsessively devoted to other men. A wine guy, a theater director, a handsome contractor, in ways that, if genders were reversed, the audience would immediately identify as emotional affairs. She throws herself into these relationships with an intensity that her marriage to Bob rarely receives. Bob, to his credit, usually wins her back through some grand gesture or moment of vulnerability. But the pattern is undeniable. Linda is a woman who craves passion, drama, and intensity. And sometimes Bob's quiet, steady love just doesn't feed that hunger. The show is honest enough to show us that love alone doesn't always satisfy everything a person needs, and Linda is the vehicle for that uncomfortable truth. 3. Lois Griffin. Chew, Family Guy. If Francine Smith is reckless and Linda Belcher is emotionally complicated, Lois Griffin is in a category entirely her own. Because Family Guy has made Lois's infidelity an explicit, recurring, and almost celebrated part of her character. Let's talk about the Bill Clinton episode first, because it remains one of the most jaw-dropping moments in the show's history. Lois meets Bill Clinton at a fundraiser, and the two share a connection that escalates rapidly. The episode plays it as comedy, but what actually happens on screen is unambiguous. Lois cheats on Peter. Not almost, not implied. She does it. The show acknowledges it. Peter finds out, And then the whole thing is resolved in the span of a few minutes because that's how Family Guy handles consequences. It doesn't. But the Clinton episode isn't an outlier. Lois has a history throughout the series of physical and emotional entanglements with other men. There's the episode where she reconnects with a college boyfriend. There are multiple scenes where she flirts with men in ways that go well beyond acceptable. There's an entire subplot built around the revelation that Lois was far wilder in her youth than anyone suspected. And the show makes clear that those impulses didn't fully disappear when she married Peter. What's remarkable about Lois is the show's refusal to condemn her for any of it. Peter Griffin is portrayed as a man-child. Lazy, irresponsible, insensitive, and often genuinely cruel to his family. In that context, the audience is almost invited to sympathize with Lois's wandering eye. She married down, she knows it, and occasionally she acts on the resentment that knowledge creates. Lois Griffin is arguably the most nuanced character in Family Guy, which is a low bar, admittedly. But her infidelity storylines reveal a woman trapped between who she was, who she wanted to be, and who she became. And sometimes she escapes that trap, if only for an episode. 4. Marge Simpson. The Simpsons. Marge Simpson is the gold standard of cartoon moms. Patient, devoted, endlessly forgiving, she has stood by Homer through 3 decades of stupidity, danger, and neglect, so it feels almost sacrilegious to include her here. But the writers of The Simpsons have visited this territory more than once, and it's worth examining what those stories tell us. The most famous instance is Jacques, the bowling instructor Marge meets in the Season 1 episode Life on the Fast Lane. Homer gives Marge a bowling ball for her birthday with his own name engraved on it, a gift clearly meant for himself. And in response, Marge takes up bowling and meets the smooth, charming Jacques. What follows is one of the most emotionally sophisticated storylines in the show's early run. Marge genuinely develops feelings for this man. They have breakfast together. He invites her to his apartment. She almost goes. The episode ends with Marge choosing Homer. She walks into the power plant and they embrace in a shot that deliberately mirrors an officer and a gentleman. It's romantic and triumphant. But here's the thing, she almost didn't choose him. For one full episode, Marge Simpson entertained the very real possibility of leaving her marriage, and the show treated that possibility with complete seriousness. Years later, in the episode with her high school crush Artie Ziff, the show returns to this well. Artie re-enters Marge's life wealthy and transformed, and once again the show asks, what if she had chosen differently? What if the life she has isn't the life she was supposed to have? The Simpsons, at its best, uses Marge's near infidelities to examine something genuinely painful. The gap between the life we chose and the life we imagined. Marge stays. She always stays. But the staying is a choice, and choices have weight precisely because they could have gone another way. 5. Linda Stotch and Betty White. South Park doesn't do subtle. When the show decides to explore infidelity among its adult female characters, it does so with the same aggressive, maximalist energy it applies to everything else, and the results are often more revealing than they first appear. Linda Stotch, Butters' mother, is one of the most tragic figures in the entire series. On the surface, she's a mild-mannered suburban mom. But the show has revealed across multiple episodes that Linda is engaged in a secret life that her family knows nothing about. Her relationship with her husband Steven is dysfunctional to the point of abuse. He's controlling, volatile, and emotionally devastating. And Linda's response to that dysfunction manifests in ways the show portrays as both darkly comic and genuinely disturbing. The show implies, through various storylines, that Linda seeks escape and intimacy outside her marriage repeatedly. What's remarkable is that South Park, a show not known for its sympathy, actually frames Linda's behavior as a direct consequence of her husband's cruelty. She isn't a villain. She's a victim of a terrible marriage who makes terrible choices. And the show, in its own brutal way, asks us to understand the difference. More broadly, South Park uses its adult female characters to skewer the myth of the perfect suburban wife. These women drink too much, lie too often, and chase fulfillment in all the wrong places. And the show argues implicitly that the community that created them is more to blame than they are. So what does it all mean? Why do cartoon writers keep returning to this storyline? The unfaithful mom, the wandering wife, the woman who almost chose differently. The answer, maybe, is that these characters are doing something animation rarely allows itself to do, telling the truth about marriage. about how love and suffocation can coexist, about how good people make bad choices when their needs go unmet for long enough, about how the perfect family home can have cracks that no one talks about out loud. These cartoon moms aren't villains, they're mirrors. And the reason these storylines hit so hard, whether we caught them as kids or only understand them now, is because somewhere, in some house, on some street, the story is true. If this video made you look at your favorite cartoon differently, drop a comment below. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden adult layers of cartoons you grew up with, you know what to do.